Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're taking a close look at monoclonal antibodies, specifically Daratumumab.
Oh yeah, Daratumumab. It's really a fascinating area of research.
Absolutely. And we're going to be focusing on the work being done by a company called Assay Genie.
Assay Genie.
Mm.
I've heard good things. They're doing some really innovative work in this field.
Yeah, they are.
Well,
Now, some people might think antibodies are pretty basic biology, but
oh, not at all.
right, this is cutting edge stuff.
Monoclonal antibodies are like, well,
Like what?
imagine a guided missile, but for your immune system.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, right? It seeks out and destroys specific targets like cancer cells without harming healthy cells.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing, huh?
That's a great analogy. So let's start with Daratumumab. Our sources say it's making a big impact in treating multiple myeloma.
Multiple myeloma, it's a type of blood cancer.
Right, and Daratumumab is showing a lot of promise, especially for patients who are newly diagnosed or if their cancer comes back.
Yep, exactly. And what's really interesting is how it actually works to kill those cancer cells.
Yeah, the source talks about a multi-pronged attack. Sounds pretty intense.
It is, you could say that. So picture this. Daratumumab attaches to a specific protein on myeloma cells.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
It's kind of like a lock and key, and this sets off a whole chain reaction.
A chain reaction. How so?
Well, one way is it basically punches holes in the cancer cell's membrane, destroying it from the outside. It's a process called complement-dependent cytotoxicity.
Complement-dependent cytotoxicity.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know. But think of it like the antibody calling in reinforcements to blast the cell apart.
Whoa. So it's not just seeking and destroying, it's calling in an airstrike too.
Uh-huh, yeah, exactly. But there's even more.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. Daratumumab also uses something called antibody-dependent cellular cytotoxicity.
Antibody-dependent.
Wow, that's a long one.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But basically, the antibody acts as like a beacon. It attaches to the cancer cell and flags it for destruction.
Why? By the immune system's natural killer cells.
Oh, wow. So it's calling for backup, but instead of 9/11, it's signaling your immune system's, like, special forces.
You got it.
Okay, that's incredible. I'm really starting to understand why this is such a revolutionary treatment. But I gotta ask, the source also mentioned that Daratumumab can actually trick cancer cells into self-destructing. Is that really possible?
Oh, it is. It's called apoptosis, which is basically programmed cell death. Daratumumab can trigger this within the cancer cell.
So it basically forces the cancer cell to commit suicide.
Yeah, you could say that's a pretty ingenious strategy.
A triple threat: seek and destroy, call for backup, and then make them self-destruct. Amazing. Now, we mentioned earlier that Assay Genie is offering a biosimilar of Daratumumab for research. What exactly is a biosimilar?
Well, it's not the exact same molecule, but it's very similar to the original.
Okay.
Think of it like a generic version of a drug.
Ah, got it.
It goes through lots of testing to ensure it's just as safe and effective, but it could be a lot more affordable.
Okay, that makes sense. So why is using a biosimilar so important for research?
Well, imagine if scientists could access these cutting-edge treatments at a lower cost.
Right.
That would be a game changer. They could do more studies, explore new ways to use it, and maybe even develop even better treatments down the road.
That's incredible. It sounds like biosimilars are key to innovation.
Absolutely.
Speaking of innovation, the Assay Genie website also talks about a bunch of other antibodies. It's like a whole arsenal of weapons against disease.
It really is. It's pretty
Hmm.
exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is. Can we talk about some of those? I'm curious to hear about what else they're targeting.
Sure. So some antibodies, like tegotumumab, they focus on death receptors.
Death receptors, what are those?
Well, they're basically like switches on cancer cells that, when activated, tell the cell to self-destruct.
Oh, wow. So it's another targeted approach.
Exactly.
So are all of these antibodies targeting cancer, or are they used for other things too?
Oh, they're looking at antibodies for all sorts of diseases.
Mm-hmm.
There's cetuximab, for example. It targets a protein called IL-6,
IL-6.
which is involved in Castleman's disease.
Yeah.
It's a rare disorder.
Okay.
And this antibody, it's not about destroying cells, but more about controlling inflammation.
Ah, interesting. So some trigger cell death, some call in the immune system, and now we're seeing them used to control inflammation too.
Yeah, it's a whole new world of
It
possibilities.
really is. It seems like the possibilities are just endless.
And we're just scratching the surface. There are so many more antibodies being developed,
Right.
each with its own unique target and way of working. It's really an exciting time to be following this research.
I agree. It's mind-blowing to think about how far we've come. But before we get carried away with the excitement, I think it's important to acknowledge that with any new technology, powerful as it is, there could be some downsides or unintended consequences, right?
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to be cautious and think about the potential risks, too. One thing that comes to mind is the possibility of off-target effects.
Off-target effects, what do you mean?
So, while monoclonal antibodies are designed to be super precise, there's always a chance they could interact with other cells in the body,
Ah, I see.
and that could lead to side effects that we don't expect.
So even with all that targeted precision, there's still a chance of hitting the wrong target, so to speak.
Yeah, you could put it that way. Think of it like trying to hit a bullseye with a dart.
Okay.
Most of the time, you're right on target, but sometimes you might hit the outer ring. Researchers are always working to make these treatments more accurate, though.
Right. And I imagine another challenge is the potential for resistance. Like with antibiotics, bacteria can become resistant over time. Could the same thing happen with these antibodies?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, yes, it's possible. Just like bacteria can evolve to avoid antibiotics, cancer cells can sometimes develop resistance to these therapies.
So the treatment might work well at first, but then become less effective.
Exactly.
So it's almost like an arms race then, between the scientists and the disease.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a constant back and forth. That's why ongoing research is so important.
Right.
Finding new targets, new strategies.
Yeah.
Got to stay one step ahead.
It sounds like a lot of work, but the potential benefits are just incredible.
Oh, they are. It's like we're finally starting to understand how to harness the power of the immune system. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, the information from Assay Genie highlights how biosimilars can really speed up this progress.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge point.
Making therapies more accessible, more affordable for researchers. It's like giving the whole field a boost.
Exactly. More researchers, more studies, more breakthroughs, and ultimately, better treatments for patients.
That's what it's all about. Now, we've talked a lot about Daratumumab, but the Assay Genie website, it mentions all these other antibodies too, and some of them have these wild names.
I know, right? They can be a mouthful.
They really can. It's like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does kind of sound like that, doesn't it?
But is there actually a system to how they're named?
Oh, absolutely. There's a system for naming all these antibodies.
There is. So there's a method to the madness.
Yep, it's called the STEM system. And it helps us make sense of all these complex names.
So, like, what does it tell us?
Well, for example, that MAB at the end.
A mab.
That tells you it's a monoclonal antibody. And the other parts of the name often give clues about what it targets or where it comes from.
Ah, so it's like a secret code.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. It's like every antibody has its own, like, superhero name.
Huh. I like that analogy.
Right, reflecting its powers and its mission.
Exactly. And just like superheroes, each of these antibodies is taking on a different challenge, fighting disease and helping to improve human health.
Well, we've covered a lot today, from how Daratumumab works to the broader potential of monoclonal antibodies and, of course, the importance of biosimilars. What would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all this?
That's a good question. Well, I think the key takeaway is hope. We talked about Daratumumab and how it's giving new options for folks with multiple myeloma, but that's just one example. Researchers are developing antibodies for so many different cancers, so many diseases, and we're seeing some really, really promising results.
So even if someone is facing a really tough diagnosis, there's still reason to be hopeful.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Medical research is always moving forward. New treatments are being developed every day. And what seemed impossible just a few years ago, well, it might be a reality today.
That's really encouraging. And it sounds like resources like Assay Genie, who are making these treatments more available for research, are playing a big part in making that progress happen.
Oh, definitely. They're helping to drive innovation, bringing those breakthroughs to patients, more quickly.
And that's what it's all about, right?
Absolutely.
Improving people's lives. So to our listeners out there, even if you're not a scientist or a doctor, you can still be part of this incredible story of medical advancement. Maybe it's supporting organizations that fund research or just staying informed.
Spreading awareness about what's possible.
Exactly.
Every bit of support helps, Financial, emotional, or even just spreading the word. It all makes a difference. We're all in this together, shaping the future of healthcare.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've gone deep into the world of daratumumab, explored the vast potential of monoclonal antibodies, and learned about all the amazing things happening in this field.
It's been an amazing journey, and I hope our listeners are leading with a sense of excitement about what the future holds.
Absolutely. It's truly inspiring to think about all the incredible work being done. And remember, folks, this is just the beginning. Keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.
It's been an amazing journey, and I hope our listeners are leaving with a sense of excitement about what the future holds.
Me too. And, it really is mind-blowing when you think about how far we've come. But I'm also curious, what does all this mean for the average person? Like, if someone listening knows someone who has cancer, or maybe they're even dealing with it themselves, what should they take away from this deep dive?
That's a great question. You know, I think the most important thing is hope. We've talked about Daratumumab and how it's offering new possibilities for people with multiple myeloma, but that's really just one small part of the bigger picture.
Right.
Researchers are working on monoclonal antibodies for all kinds of cancers and other diseases too,
Yeah.
and we're seeing some incredibly promising outcomes.
So even if someone is facing a really difficult diagnosis, you're saying it doesn't mean there's no hope.
Not at all.
Mhm.
Medical research is constantly moving forward. There are new treatments being developed all the time, and what might have seemed impossible a few years ago, well, it could be a reality today.
That's really encouraging to hear. And I imagine that having resources like Assay Genie providing tools and biosimilars for research is going to be a huge help in speeding up that progress, right?
Definitely. Making these advanced therapies more accessible to researchers, like SAGenie is doing, is going to accelerate those breakthroughs and get them to the people who need them faster. It's truly groundbreaking.
So, to our listeners out there, even if you're not a scientist or a doctor, you can still play a part in this amazing story of medical advancement,
Absolutely.
whether it's supporting organizations that are funding research or even just staying informed about all of these advances, you can make a difference.
That's right. Every bit of support counts. Financial, emotional, or even just talking about it with others. We're all in this together, shaping the future of healthcare.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. We've really gone deep into how daratumumab targets cancer cells, explored all the incredible potential of monoclonal antibodies as a whole, and learned about some of the amazing things happening right now in this exciting field.
It has been a fascinating journey. I hope our listeners have come away with a new understanding of all the incredible work being done in this field.
Absolutely. It's really inspiring to think about. And remember, everyone, this is just the beginning. The future of medicine is being written right now, and it's a story filled with hope, innovation, and the incredible potential of the human immune system. Keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.
It really is inspiring to think about.
And remember, everyone, this is just the beginning. The future of medicine is being written right now. It's a story filled with hope, innovation, and the power of the human immune system. Keep those brains buzzing, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.